morning and welcome back to the channel. We've received a ton of requests for a video telling about who we are and why we moved to Alaska, so today we are going to tell you our story.
What are you doing, little guy?
As many of you already know, our lab's name is Benelli and he just turned 9 years old. And this little guy is Diablo. He is a long-haired Chihuahua and he will be 10 here in a few days.
Bring here. Drop it. When it's not snowing and not super windy, it's really great to get the dogs out here, let them run around and play fetch with Benelli, get some energy out of them. Because we do live in a small RV, it's a little less than 300 square feet, so there's not a lot of room in there for the dogs to do much. All the snow on his face.
Oh, you got a big old snowball stuck on you. Oh, look at this snowball stuck on him.
Oh my gosh.
But, okay, I think it's time for you to be picked up. That's a big old snowball. Drop. We have received a lot of questions about who we are, and we know we didn't make a video like this at the beginning. Our first several videos were not intended for YouTube. They were solely for our own memories and for family to let them know and show them what we are doing up here in Alaska. So we initially didn't plan to make a video like this, but it's been requested quite a bit in our comment section, probably the most requested
Definitely, yeah.
out of our comments. So here we are.
I'm Chris, and this is my wife, Katie. We are married. We've been together for about 12 years, roughly. I am 35.
And I'm 31.
Yep. Everybody has a really big misconception on our age for some reason. I don't know, they think that she's like super young and I'm old or something, but we're actually pretty close together.
Prior to moving to Alaska, we both grew up and lived in Pennsylvania our entire lives.
One commonly asked thing about us is what we did for work in our past lives, like what our professional background was. And for me, that was working as a heavy equipment mechanic for about 15, 16 years.
And I was a correctional officer. I worked in corrections for almost a decade.
Yeah. We obviously had other small jobs and whatnot in between, side work and things like that, but that was our primary profession. We've had a lot of questions in the comments section about how do you know how to do this or how do you know how to do that? And we're not professional builders or anything like that. We're just normal people out here building up our lives. And we do have some past experience. Most of our experience with that type of work comes from remodeling our old home or building sheds and chicken houses and a lot of things that homeowners would do. But I also have been involved with helping build a couple of garages and pole buildings and remodeling other homes other than our own. That's gained me a lot of skills and whatnot that I needed to know how to do this stuff instead of just being thrown right into it with no knowledge at all. That would be really difficult. So that hasn't made it a little bit easier for us, but we still have to do a lot of our own research and figure out how to do things because we're doing a lot of new things out here that we've never done before in an environment that's new to us as well.
And I've also always enjoyed helping Chris with all of our home projects and DIY projects that we've done in the past. So this is a really fun experience for me as well, being able to give some contribution and help and learn while we're building our home and everything out here. We are working towards a common goal, and it really does just make sense for us both to work together to achieve that goal. Do you just want to go see the chickens?
These chickens are quite feisty. If you don't pour the water out here, if you don't pour the water out here before giving it to them, they will literally try and jump in the water.
There she goes.
See how that one just flew down? They will fly into that water dish if you try and stick it in there.
We have 14 chickens, and one of them is a rooster, 13 hens. And this breed is called Novagen. And that's what all the hens are. The rooster is not a Novagen. We're not quite sure what he is. But over the years, we've raised about 5 different flocks of chickens back in Pennsylvania. And we had a variety of breeds. We've never had anything quite like these guys. They've been doing really well this winter. They've continuously laid eggs. They've been handling the cold pretty well. We're about a month away or so from spring. Yeah, I got you. I do.
He has some giant feet.
I know. The coop that they're in right now, if you watched our chicken coop build, is temporary. This summer we do plan to build them a pretty nice chicken coop, something similar to what we had back in Pennsylvania for our flocks there. We also plan to give them a big run. Right now it's really hard to free range them. We have eagles here all the time, and between the eagles and the ravens, we're really afraid of losing one of the birds because they're always on watch for something that's easy to grab. And especially this winter, it's really hard for them to be outside. We've had a lot of snow. We don't have a covered place for them to go right now. And so there's really nothing for them to peck at. That's just snow. So we can't wait to get something more permanent for them and get them a huge outdoor run that's protected from the elements and protected from predators. They're ready for spring. He's already molting. There you go. Back in with your ladies. One in this box so far today. Says. Oh, she's in there laying an egg.
Hurry it up.
Hurry up.
She's probably laying on a couple too.
Oh, that one got frozen.
Oh no. Yeah, it's still been dropping into the teens at night.
We didn't get it quick enough. Okay, well I scared her out of there from laying her eggs, so we'll have another one here soon. I want to clear up a lot of confusion that we had, especially when we posted the video about the cabin. We had a lot of questions asking if we were living in the cabin or where we are living here in Alaska. And the answer to that is we are living in our 1993 motorhome. That was an investment that we made prior to moving here. And while living in an RV here in Alaska isn't ideal, and it would probably be pretty rough to near impossible to live somewhere north of us, like say Fairbanks in the winter in Alaska, it's fared pretty well for us here. Even in our cold temperatures, we've hit, I think the coldest it got was about negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit, and we've been able to keep it climate controlled and comfortable in there throughout this entire winter. We have a couple of reasons for why we purchased the RV before moving here. One is we needed a second vehicle to haul all of our belongings across the country, and we needed something that could haul a lot of belongings and a lot of weight. And on top of that, for the price that we got the RV for, we would not have even been able to build a shed up here for that price to live in throughout the winter until we got our cabin built. We knew coming up here that we were purchasing raw land, and we, one, didn't want to rush and build something inadequate to live in throughout the winter here, and two, we knew that we needed something quickly, and that's where the RV was very beneficial to us and bringing it up here. And having the RV has given us the ability to not go into survival mode because we didn't have to rush to get anything built. We did do a semi-restoration on the RV, so if that's something that you'd be interested in seeing, let us know in the comments, because we did document the entire restoration of the RV, and we would love to do a video if that's something that our viewers would like to see.
So why did we move to Alaska? That is such a huge question. And there is a lot of answers. The the reason why we moved to Alaska and the reason why we're living off grid is very different. And I think if I really got into all of it, it would probably take me about an hour to explain it all of my reasoning anyways. There's a lot of good reasons. You know, obviously it's a beautiful state, but that's not the main reason. I think that the number one reason is the freedom. Really, the freedom. Where we live, you don't have to have permits. Most of it's untaxed. I mean, we were able to get a tax exemption for building our house. That's a huge savings. Land here, like good land, I'm not talking like swampland, like obviously swampland in Alaska is cheap, but even good land here is cheaper than where we lived in Pennsylvania. We probably wouldn't have been able to afford to buy this much land in Pennsylvania. When I say that we can't or we wouldn't have been able to afford it, I mean without making a mortgage and payments on it. Here we were looking to come here and pay with cash, and that's what we did. When I say that we moved here for the freedom, it's a really broad answer. I'm trying to compare it to where we came from. One big issue with Pennsylvania is we had so much taxes to pay. I literally think that we probably worked our first 3 to 4 months just to pay for all of our taxes. It was kind of crazy because we had the school tax. If you're a homeowner in Pennsylvania, you have a school tax to pay, and that was huge. I mean, a big chunk of money, probably a full month's of paycheck. Property taxes where we lived were high. Energy generation where we lived was very high, in my opinion, compared to what we're paying here to live off grid for electric to survive. We had income tax there, which we have no income tax here. Our yearly taxes here, like total to live on this property, and I'm sure it's going to change if they reassess it for our home, but our total right now is about $200 a year. That's unheard of. Yeah, so I mean, I guess a lot of the freedom is from the taxes, but obviously that's not everywhere in Alaska either. I mean, if you live in one of the cities, your taxes are going to be really high. I think even Anchorage has a school tax like Pennsylvania had. Not everywhere here is cheap to live per se. And when I say cheap to live, like things are still very expensive to buy here, but overall it's incredibly less amount of money compared to where we came from. I'm not really going to get into all the laws aspect, but there are a lot of laws that I agree with a lot more here that do give you more freedom. A lot of people that know about Alaska already know about those laws, and I'm not going to get into it because it might start like political arguments or something, which we're not interested in. In our area of Pennsylvania, you couldn't live legally. I'm not saying people don't do it. You couldn't live legally off grid like we're doing here in our RV. They would come in and kick you off of your own property if you tried to live in a camper or an RV there. It's totally illegal in the township that we were in. That's overreach, really. I mean, I understand why they do it because there is big problems with the camper cities and stuff going on right now in certain parts of the country. And that's understandable. That is a problem where the roads are just lined with campers. That's crazy. But I don't see why they should keep you from doing it on your own property as long as you're not trashing the entire place. Now, with that freedom, it opens up a lot of possibilities for your neighbor in Alaska to have a junkyard, possibly. I mean, we don't, but luckily we're surrounded by forest here. But that is a possibility that could happen because it's not regulated here in this area particularly. One other issue with staying where we were in Pennsylvania is we would have never been able to have like the wilderness seclusion that we have here that we wanted. I mean, we're pretty far out here. The area that we lived in Pennsylvania was mostly farmland. Our house was surrounded by mostly woods, but we did have close neighbors. A lot of the area where we were like 1 to 2 acre lots. So you can figure people weren't right beside each other, but everybody had their own yard, but there was still a lot of people. You didn't really get away from people per se. Not that we're trying to get away from people, but it is really nice to be able to go outside and have some privacy. You don't have issues like with us always being involved in DIY projects. This is a really good example about what we went through in Pennsylvania. We would be in the middle of some DIY projects, and when you don't have a lot of money, sometimes that stuff takes time. It really does. And you might have building materials sitting around for a while, just trying to do the project at your own pace. And back there, we actually had neighbors that reported us to the township before. And then we have the township on us, and they're like, oh, you got to get rid of this. You can't have these building materials in your yard. Out here, you don't have to worry about that. And that was something that we definitely experienced there, and we wanted to get away from. We don't want to have to deal with that. Prior to picking Alaska as where we were definitely going to go, we did consider other states. And we were mainly considering northern states. Personally, I wanted to get away from the humidity. The humidity, even in Pennsylvania, was kind of dreaded for me. I felt like I had to hide in the air conditioning during the summer, because if not, I just sweat profusely, and it was disgusting. And it was just hot. Like, I didn't like that heat. Here it's great. Like, it's 60 degrees all summer. You don't need air conditioning in this area. I think they do up near Fairbanks. I think it does get up to like 90 up there. Down here it stays pretty cool. And that was one big reason for picking this specific area, is it does stay cool even during the summer. I want to say that we originally started planning on moving somewhere else. We were specifically looking in the Rocky Mountain area, like the northern part, like northern Idaho, Montana, those areas. That was about 10 years ago. That was quite a while ago. But when we were getting really serious about it, it's a shame, because back then land there was so cheap compared to what it is right now. That area has really changed. With that being said, we still couldn't afford it, even as cheap as the land was back then. We were just not at a good point to where we could drop everything and go out there. We weren't established enough. We were pretty young yet. I mean, we were in our early 20s, and we didn't have the savings to be able to do something like that correctly without like taking out a mortgage. Yeah, I guess that's again, when I say I can't afford something, it means that I couldn't pay cash. And that's what we were looking to do, and we just couldn't afford it. One thing that I really liked about Alaska is all the opportunities for hunting and fishing different game and fish than what we had back on the East Coast. Both of us grew up fishing, and I grew up hunting and even trapping with my father when I was younger. And I think that you get to a point where you kind of have been able to almost do everything in your area that you lived in, and things start to become monotonous. And well, at least for me, I felt like I had become monotonous and bored with a lot of things. And it's nice sometimes to get a change of scenery and do something different in life while you're still young enough to do it. Because I feel like if I waited a little bit longer, I might have a really hard time doing some of those things that I aspire to do, especially out here, because it is harder to do things here. I mean, you get a whole different change of scenery and a whole different change of wildlife out here, and that gives a lot of different experiences. Back in Pennsylvania, we were always into things like snowmobiling or ATVs, dirt bikes. I've since moved on from them. They're too hard on me. Not the snowmobiles. I'll probably eventually get back into snowmobiles, but I got really beat up on the ATVs and the dirt bikes over the years. So that's why we had moved to side-by-sides. We'd always go out on little adventures, just checking out new things, going to new places. We'd always go camping with our friends and stuff. And that's become difficult back in Pennsylvania in the area we were in. A lot of things have become regulated, and instead of it being like a free-for-all where you just go out riding on public land or big wide open areas, it's now regulated, and it's like a membership fee, and you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to camp here and do that. So it took a lot of the fun out of it. It really did. And out here, it's still like that. You can still come out here and go camping on public ground and go riding if you have an ATV, four-wheeler, snowmobile, snow machine, side by side, all those things. You can take them out and do what you want to do and go on those adventures still here pretty freely. I think that a lot of people take that for granted. You can even ride them on the road here, which is definitely unheard of where we came from. Fortunately, we've been able to travel most of the United States over the years, and we've seen a lot of different places. And when we traveled here a few years back, we fell in love with this state. We literally drove the entire highway system, and we were looking at properties for sale. We didn't find what we wanted back then at that time, but we pretty much knew after that, and we were even here during the winter. I think that the winter is one of the most beautiful times to visit here, personally. Winter and summer, perfect, but springtime it's kind of ugly, and fall time it's kind of ugly because everything's dead. But If it's covered in snow, it's really beautiful, or if it's all green, it's really beautiful. We knew that we were in love with the state when we visited here, and we started working towards the goal of getting moved out here, which took a bit of time. I think it took about a year from the time that we started till the time we actually got here. And it was nonstop because we had to downsize, we had to sell our house, we had to prepare our vehicles and gather the things that we thought that we would need out here. While there are a lot of other reasons that we moved here that are smaller or insignificant reasons, we mainly moved here for the freedom and for the experience. It's a new experience, and so far we love it here. Back when we were looking to move out west and we realized that we couldn't really afford it at the time, we started thinking, well, maybe this is something that we should do when we retire, so that we have a retirement income coming in and we can move out to more of a rural, remote area, I guess you would say. But the more that we got to thinking about it over the years, me personally, I worried that I wouldn't be able to do it physically. I know so many people that things changed their lives, like they were injured, their health went bad, they had kids, things like that. And all three of those things could play a huge part in being able to come out here and do this or make it significantly more difficult. It would have made it to the point where we may have had to just buy a house that was already built, which would have been very expensive. We would have had to take out a loan. Out here, a 2-acre property with a shed on it, I've seen go for $150,000. That's kind of ridiculous. I've seen shacks for $300,000, and if you're looking at a decent house in Alaska, you're looking at $500,000. I know that that's obviously pretty average these days. Housing is kind of crazy. We really wanted to get away from having a mortgage by coming out here, or moving in general. We knew that when we were going to make this big change, it needed to be worth it to give up our careers and giving up our nice home that we had. It was 2,500 square foot home, way more than we needed, but it was comfortable there and it was a nice house. And in order to give all of that up, it had to be worth it. It had to be a change that was very great. I love it out here. This environment is perfect for us. It's really what we were looking for. We were also able to eliminate that mortgage forever. We're never going to have a mortgage again, unless if we decide, there's an eagle. We're never going to have that mortgage again out here, doing it the way that we're doing it, building our own home and everything. It looks like we did get a couple inches of snow last night.
Yeah.
I know it's springtime in most of the world right now, but it is still definitely winter here. It's been in the teens at night, and during the day it's been in the 20s. I think this is the warmest day so far. It's maybe almost 30 degrees now.
Yeah.
It's starting to melt the snow a little bit. Don't paying attention to my little mishap here. I may or may not have accidentally pushed a big iceberg into the solar panel and broke it out of the frame. So yeah, we're gonna have to repair this soon. It's not a big deal. It didn't crack the panel or anything. I just need to flip it around and bolt it up back on the top. But oh well, stuff happens.
We went and grabbed some tools, so Chris is going to flip this panel around and get it put back on. Chris already mentioned a bunch of the reasons why we decided to move to Alaska, but I wanted to point out a couple more reasons. This video is totally unscripted and we're just speaking from the heart, so some things might be a little out of order or jumbled up. One of our big reasons that we wanted to move here, or get out of the situation we were in general with having a mortgage and having to have two incomes, was really being forced to have two incomes with that mortgage. And we didn't have time for each other. We worked opposite shifts. We saw each other a couple of hours twice a week. That was something that we really wanted to change. We wanted more time to spend together. We get to see each other every day, which has been really awesome. Where we decided to purchase land, we don't have building codes, and that is giving us the ability to build our own home. And we had initially looked into doing something very similar back in Pennsylvania, and we realized that it was just unaffordable, and there was so many regulations and restrictions that we would have had to pay a contractor to build our own home, and that was just completely out of a budget for us. By coming out here and being able to buy property cheap, we not only eliminated that mortgage, but we eliminated those high taxes as well, and that's going to give us the ability to go down to that single income. That gives us the opportunity to have me be a stay-at-home mom when we decide to have children, and that is super important to us. As many of you know, childcare is really expensive, and that would have forced both of us to continue working and paying for childcare and having somebody else raise our children. And that's just not something that's acceptable to us. We want to raise our own children, and we want to homeschool. And the homeschooling aspect here in Alaska is a lot more free than in a lot of areas. There's a lot more opportunity for different curriculums, and that was, again, very important to us to be able to have those options for our children. There we go. I want to answer a question that we get quite a bit and probably multiple times on almost every single video. And that is, why does Chris carry a gun?
Because I'm scared.
First, I want to point out that both of us do have professional training. I've had professional training through my career, and Chris has had professional training as well. So we both fully understand firearm safety.
The main reason that we carry firearms out here is because of the wildlife. There are bears that seasonally come through our area, and some of the other areas that we travel to, there are even more bears. Here, we're most likely to see black bears. There are, on occasion, brown bears, but normally they stay out by the spawning areas. Our biggest threat here is actually the moose. For the most part, the moose mind their own business, and we have them here all the time. They're always in the forest here. It seems like you just walk around a corner and they're like peeking out behind a tree looking at you all the time. They stay here constantly. And there's always new ones coming in and out of our property as well. This is a good example of why we carry. Roughly about 2 weeks ago, we had a bull moose that was staying, he was just sleeping on the property, and right now with the snow really deep, they love to go into areas that we have plowed out or trails that we've made because it's easy to walk. And I think they might be getting a little cranky because of the deep snow and the long winter. And now we're getting at the end of the winter, they're just kind of taking out their anger. But anyhow, for no apparent reason, the bull moose came out of the woods and violently chased Benelli, trying to stomp him with its front legs. Luckily, Benelli's really fast and he got away from it, and he ran away from it around the RV and it couldn't catch him, and I was able to get him back inside before there was a real issue. Shooting wildlife is a last-ditch resort. We don't want to have to go to doing that, but I personally wouldn't be able to live with myself if there was a situation where that moose would have been stomping my wife or stomping my dog and I had no way to defuse it. I can't just run up to the moose and punch it. We're not superhumans. I just wouldn't be able to live with myself knowing that I didn't carry a tool that could possibly diffuse that situation from losing my wife or my dog or even myself. You know, I can't outrun a moose. There's no way. They're fast.
And a lot of them are aggressive.
Yeah.
That bull was very aggressive, and he laid about 15 feet from the RV for hours and hours.
Yeah. And you can try and shoo them away and they don't care. Mm-hmm. They'd assume just stomp you to death than leave. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so hopefully that clears up a little bit of the questioning as to why we're carrying a firearm. It's not that we live in a war zone like one commenter asked.
Or just because we want to while we're out here working. I mean, sometimes it does get in the way a little bit, but it's that extra protection that we have in case we're building and we're using power tools and can't hear a moose coming up behind us. I mean, sometimes we've been working out here and we'll walk around the RV and there's a moose 10 feet from us.
Yeah.
So it's just that extra precaution just in case one does decide to come running at us.
Exactly. Where we came from and here, and in a lot of the United States, firearm usage and ownership is perfectly legal and normal. And we are firearm enthusiasts. We enjoy target practicing from time to time. We do enjoy using firearms for all types of different hunting. And they do serve that purpose of self-defense from whatever that threat may be, like a moose.
Ow.
You're like a tack driver. Like every bullet is in the same hole.
Should we go take a look at it?
Yeah.
Oh, I only had one off to the side, all the rest.
All of them were in the same hole. That's pretty dang good.
Got some silt in there.
Still pretty good stuff. It's getting to the point where if the ice is too high almost to get the jug underneath the water.
So we've mentioned our reasons of why we moved to Alaska. Let's talk about how we got to Alaska. As Chris already mentioned, it took about a year from the time we came up here initially and fell in love with Alaska to the time we actually got moved all the way up here. It took a lot of planning, a lot of budgeting, and just a lot of prep. We downsized quite a bit. We looked at our budget, I think 5 or 6 times or more,
Yeah.
just rewriting and rewriting.
Can we really afford to do this?
Trying to determine what we needed to take, what we were getting rid of, and as different costs came up or if things ended up being cheaper versus what we thought they might be. We didn't initially have the RV when we had planned to make the move up here, and we had looked into a couple of different options on moving up here. The first one was a moving company, and the moving companies are just insanely expensive to move from where we did up here.
Yeah.
It was just completely unaffordable. It would have taken a lot out of our budget to buy a property here, so that was just not an option for us. The next thing we looked at was taking the ferry from Washington up here with 2 vehicles and 2 trailers, and with what we were looking at bringing, I think it was going to cost us roughly $30,000 is what they quoted us.
I can't even remember. Whatever it was obscene and we weren't going that route.
Right. And the worst part about that was when we had called about 6 months in advance, they could not book 2 large vehicles on the same ferry. So we would have had to ride in separate vehicles on separate ferries in 2 different months. I believe one was July and one was August. And again, that just wasn't an option for us to come up here 2 different months.
Yeah, keep in mind the only reason why we were looking at those options was because it was during Canada's COVID restrictions, which we didn't meet all the requirements to come through Canada at the time, and it was going to be almost impossible for us to come through without a lot of hassle. So that's why we were looking into the alternate methods to try and kind of get around some of that.
And we weren't really sure how we were going to get all of our stuff up here.
We only had the truck and the Jeep at the time, which the Jeep can't really haul anything other than whatever's inside of it. Maybe a small trailer, but not enough to really get anything done.
And we had the enclosed trailer as well.
Yeah, we already had our enclosed trailer and our dump trailer. So we knew we wanted to bring both of those up. Use the enclosed trailer as a moving trailer and use the dump trailer to haul up our equipment and our side-by-side.
The issue was getting the rest of our stuff up that wouldn't fit in the enclosed trailer, and that's when Chris started looking for box trucks. We thought that might be an option for us.
We even looked at semi trucks because we had that much stuff. We ended up having to make a third trip. That wasn't in the original plans.
While Chris was looking at box trucks on Facebook Marketplace,
Yeah.
he ended up stumbling upon, I guess maybe a couple weeks into looking, stumbling upon 2 different RV deals.
Finding a diesel pusher RV that's in decent usable shape for a decent price was pretty difficult back at that time. Might be easier now. I don't know. I haven't checked the market.
So when the RV popped up on Facebook Marketplace, it was an insanely good deal, or what we thought was a really good deal.
No, it was. Yeah, it's still a good deal.
And we knew that that was going to be the way we were going to come up here and
Live in temporarily.
live comfortably.
Yeah.
So we ended up messaging the guy, and we drove about 5.5 hours to go pick it up, and we picked it up for $9,000. Did need some work inside, but we were able to make it livable and comfortable.
Yeah, we had to do things like put a new roof on it, which we did ourselves. We repainted on the interior, took up all the old carpet and put in regular hardwood flooring, something that's more durable with like having a dog in there and with a lot of foot traffic.
And with it being 30 years old, Chris had to do some mechanical stuff to it just to make sure it could make the 5,000-mile trip up here.
Yeah, it had been sitting. I mean, we drove it the 5.5 hours home, no problem, but it had been sitting for quite some time, so it did need some maintenance to make sure that we wouldn't be breaking down on that long trip, especially running it close to its max combined GVW, what we were hauling inside of it, in the basement, and behind it in the trailer. It's almost time to switch my jug.
It took us about 4.5 months to restore the RV to the point to where it was livable, and then we took a little bit more time to get all of the mechanical stuff done with the RV as well once the weather got nice, because I think we bought it in like January. So there was snow on the ground, it was cold, but we didn't want to do any of that mechanical work until it was warm out. And we knew we had plenty of time before we were making the move up here.
Yeah, we worked on the interior work during the winter because we could heat the inside pretty easily. It was probably in the 20s or 30s that winter in Pennsylvania. It wasn't too cold.
Yeah.
Over the next several months, we worked on downsizing our belongings. We had a lot of stuff that we didn't necessarily need because we did have a 2,500 square foot house. It was full of stuff, and it was just us two living there. I don't know why we had so much stuff, but it was a big relief to downsize all of that. And we had extra vehicles. I had an extra truck that I sold off, another old truck similar to what I have, extra trailers to sell off, different things like that. So we cashed out our assets. That definitely went part of the ways on helping us get up here and make this change, as well as we made some last minute repairs on our house and put it on the market, which luckily it was a really good time to sell. I'm sure the market's actually went up even higher right now, but we were living in that house for over 8 years, so we had some good equity in it, and we were able to cash out and use some more of that money to help us get to where we are now and make this change. We already had a lot of the things that we brought here, but we did go ahead and start planning ahead and buying some of the things that we knew we would need here that were very expensive to buy up here versus back east, so we could bring that stuff with us and have it right away. Because that's the other thing, is some things up here take a while to get. It seems like everything just takes time up here compared to down there.
Or
it's hard
super
to find.
expensive, too.
Yeah, if you can't buy it used, which we try and buy stuff used as much as we can. Our skid loader's a 1995. We bought it used 10 years ago. The RV's a 1993. We bought it used for dirt cheap.
Your truck's a 97.
My truck is a 97. It's rotted out. It's 500,000 miles on it, and it's old. That was a sacrifice we had to make to get where we are, because we aren't rich. We just worked blue-collar jobs ever since we've gotten out of high school, essentially. I mean, she went to college. You didn't really talk about that, but she did go to college, so she has a college degree, and her degree did help in some of, I guess, your endeavors for work. We're not retired or anything, so that entire time we were just hustling to get what we needed, essentially. I think something that's really helped us out here is that we were already doing a lot of things back in Pennsylvania that we're going to be doing here anyways. We lived on a gravel road that we had to self-maintain, so we had the equipment for that. We had to plow ourselves out in the winter, so we already had all the snow moving equipment for doing that. We had the skid loader for moving firewood because we split and burned our own firewood almost every year. I mean, we had a lot milder winters in Pennsylvania, and some of these last few winters, we almost didn't even need any firewood hardly because it was so warm. But I'd say back when we first bought our house, we were going through a lot of firewood because it was so cold. We also grew up doing that just to save money because we didn't grow up rich or anything, and that was one of the ways that our family saved money was by burning firewood because we could get the wood for free. And if you have a truck and trailer and a chainsaw, you can get it for pretty cheap, just your fuel to go get it.
We sold our house in August of 2022, and we stayed with family until we got everything prepped and ready to go. By the end of September of that same year, we started making our trip up here.
Yeah.
And we initially wanted to get here in like 7 days. We
Yeah.
really wanted to kind of book it and get up here. We didn't want to be traveling on the road with all of our stuff for that long.
We were running both vehicles very close to the maximum GVW of what they should have been carrying, and we didn't want to have any issues. You can burn up axles and stuff pretty easily when running that heavy. We were prepared with like brand new tires and things like that so that we wouldn't have as many issues.
And a couple of times throughout the first couple of days, we had little mishaps here and there. We had an awning blow off because of 70-mile-an-hour
gosh.
winds, and
Yeah.
then we had more winds later on that tried to blow open the rest of our awnings. We had to stop and strap those down. But as we're about halfway across the country, Canada advised that they were lifting their COVID restrictions. That was a big relief for us because, one, we weren't sure how we were going to fit a 40-foot RV with a 20-foot trailer in a Walgreens parking lot to get tested for COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And finding a place where we could go with both of those big vehicles and all of our stuff, basically our whole life with us, was going to pose as something a little difficult.
Yeah.
So
They wanted you to have hotels planned out and all that. It was a lot of crazy stuff. We did have a lease agreement which would allow us through, but it was mainly all the COVID testing and stuff. We were trying to avoid that in the ArriveCan app, which it could have been done.
we ended up deciding to take a couple of extra days and just do a bunch of short days. And I'm glad we got to do that. We took our time, and my dad drove up and stopped in Montana
Oh,
to
yeah.
see us
Yeah.
and spend the day with us while we were up there before we crossed the border.
We did have a minor breakdown in Montana. We had an equalizer break on the dump trailer.
I did forget
And-
about that. You were welding in the parking lot in
Yeah.
the rain.
Yeah, we just pulled out a welder and we started the generator on the RV and welded it back together and kept on going. Just got to roll with the punches.
Yep.
That's I would rather have a breakdown like that. There could be a lot worse things happening. That's for sure.
And then we got to the border, which crossing was super
Smooth.
quick and easy.
Yeah.
I mean, we were with the border agent for 2 minutes
Yeah.
crossing.
I went inside and declared our firearms, which probably took maybe a half an hour, and then we were on our way. They never even looked at anything we had, which we were shocked because we had a lot of stuff. We had most of our life belongings that we had left with us.
Switch that out.
Yeah.
With Canada lifting the restrictions too, that gave us more time to be able to get from border to border. And we were a little anxious about doing that at first because I think it was like a 3
It
or
was a
4 day limit.
That you had to rush through the country and get back into Alaska, yeah.
And driving as big of equipment as we were through the mountains at that point, we were a
We
little
weren't sure
concerned.
we weren't sure how long it was going to take.
We were able to take our time and get here safely through Canada, and we stopped in Tok for the night. And then, because of all of the frost heaves and potholes that are
Oh, yeah.
completely unavoidable
Our next issue.
throughout the Alcan and from the Canadian border to Tok,
We were doing like 20 or 30 with the RV. The RV was the problem because it was so long with also a 20-foot trailer plus a 5-foot tongue on that trailer.
right?
It was
when you hit the
ridiculous over
frost
the frost
heaves,
heaves pivoting at the trailer. And
Yeah.
yeah, it ended up from all of that constant motion of heaving, it ended up starting to crack the welds on the hitch receiver of the trailer. And we did stop and weld that back together just in case, because I don't think it would have fell off, but it was starting to crack, and I was like, you know what, let's just take care of this now, because I don't know what condition the roads are between Tok and Anchorage at that point. It had been like a year since we had driven them.
After Chris got that all welded back together, we were able to finally make it to Anchorage. We do have family up in Anchorage, and so we were able to rent a room from them and keep all of our belongings there while we continued our search for properties.
Which that was a big thing when we were trying to purchase land while still living in Pennsylvania. It was very hard because we were narrowed down to a specific area here in Kenai that we wanted to buy, and a few properties that we were very interested in popped up, but they would sell very quickly. And it was probably because the price was right and you could tell it was clearly good land. It wasn't a swamp.
Living in Anchorage gave us the ability to continue our search,
Yep.
and we're really grateful that we had a place to stay and a place to keep all of our stuff.
Yeah, in the meantime, that was really awesome. Plus, it just so happens that it's my best friend that we were staying with, so that was a good experience because, who doesn't want to hang out with their best friend?
I think our official date in Anchorage was October 6th, and we came down here on the peninsula within 3 or 4 days
Something
to
like
look
that,
for
yeah.
properties, and we found this one, which was not the first choice on our list.
No. We actually looked at this property that we bought online, and they didn't do a good job of advertising it. Probably that was good in our favor because the property itself was great, but all they advertised was the falling down shack that was on the property in the ad, I would say, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we seen that and we were like, oh my gosh, look at that place. It looks terrible. And they were asking way too much. They were asking over double what we paid for it. And that was why we had kind of eliminated it. But we ended up looking at almost close to 40 properties after we got here. Oh, well, we tried to look at around 40, I would say. Some of them we couldn't even find. The properties up here are kind of strange. They list them and they're not where they say they are, or you can't find them.
And a lot of what we thought was good land in pictures was pure swamp.
Yeah, you get out there and you try and walk onto the property and it's a foot of water.
During that property search, while we were down here, I think we came back to this property 3 times. After we made the trip back up to Anchorage, we kind of sat on it for about a week, deciding what we wanted to do. And then we decided to pull the trigger and put an offer in on this property. So we called a realtor and they wrote up an offer for us. And in about 6 hours ish.
Yeah, they actually took it right away. Maybe we should have even offered them less.
After a long ordeal with paperwork, we finally settled on this property in December of 2022, and we took our first trip here as property owners in January to kind of scope out the property and just kind of see what was going on around here. We had already walked the property when we looked at it, but we really wanted to get a good idea now that it was ours of what we needed to do to get all of our stuff here.
Fast forward to February, I made the decision that I was going to go by myself back down to Pennsylvania and purchase another trailer to bring the remainder of our belongings back up, like Katie's Jeep and everything. I mean, our sawmill was down there and a bunch of other belongings that were heavy that we crated up on the trailer. So I started heading down there, and I had very unfortunate luck on my way down there in, where was I? What part of Canada?
Oh, you were in Calgary, right?
Yeah. In Calgary, Canada, my pickup truck encountered an issue which slowed me down a bit. Luckily, it didn't stop me. It has a manual transmission, and the 5th gear in the transmission, it rides on like a cluster shaft. I'm not sure what exactly the shaft's called. I can't remember the perfect name for it, whatever the technical name is. But anyways, it completely sheared the shaft off, and 5th gear just dropped to the bottom of the transmission. And it was while I was cruising down the road at 65, 70, and I was like, oh wow, what just happened? And luckily I went for 4th gear and it was still there. I was like, whew, thank goodness I'm still moving. This is a really bad place, only halfway back to Pennsylvania. So I ran all the way from Calgary, Canada, back to Pennsylvania, doing about 58 mile an hour in 4th gear. That was terrible. It felt like it drug on forever.
But it still only took you like 6 days to get back.
Yeah, I got back to Pennsylvania. I covered those almost 5,000 miles in about 6.5 days. And that was still sleeping at night. I would just sleep in my truck. I actually had a little bed in there that I took the passenger seat out and I made a bed platform in the passenger side to sleep in. Once I got to Pennsylvania, then I had to pull my transmission out, rebuild it, put it back in.
On top of having the flu.
Yeah,
when
and
you got
then
back.
I also got the flu. Terrible timing, so I was sick for like a week. So anyways, after getting everything packed and getting everything repaired, headed back up the road. And I actually had a co-pilot on my way back up, which was kind of nice. My grandfather came back up with me on that trip. That was awesome. I think he had a good time. I don't know. I was giving him long driving days. I think that, I don't remember how fast. Did we get back in 6 days?
It was like 6 or 7 days.
Yeah, I think that we got back here in 6 days. So we were running pretty long days. It was a lot of driving in a short time.
But you were gone for a month total.
Yeah, I was almost gone for a month because of getting the flu and repairs and just getting packed in general, and securing a new trailer. That took a little bit of time because I was trying to find a used trailer. There was just none on the market that weren't any cheaper than new price at the time, unfortunately. People didn't have the titles for them.
So once he got back to Anchorage, that same day we started digging out all of our stuff. Anchorage had a lot of snow.
2 days to get everything dug out and hooked up to trailers, and trailers pulled out. That was a lot of work.
But the reason that we wanted to do that and come during the winter and not once all the snow melted is because the RV was 40,000 pounds. And
Without
then
the trailer.
Without the trailer, and we needed to make sure that our trail coming back into the property was still ice covered, so that way we didn't just sink in the mud. If you saw our mud season video, that's what the trail looked like
all spring. Yeah.
All spring, and we wouldn't have been able to get the RV back here.
Yeah, we had to get our stuff into the property while it was frozen for sure. If we had waited till it thawed, we would have not gotten in here. It would have been a massive amount of winching, and we would have probably had to hire a bulldozer to drag us in or something. It would have been ridiculous. Yeah, so I guess we got here, and luck have it, it had snowed another 2.5, 3 feet. So we had to dig the entire driveway out again since the time that we had been here in January when we snow blowed it out.
Luckily, we had the skid loader this time, and we were able to bucket snow.
Yeah, we brought the skid loader that time. We couldn't bring the skid loader the first time because it was buried almost 6 feet of snow probably. It was insane. In the back of my friend's lot where we couldn't get to it.
That's about where we started with our videos, which was about a week or two after we got here, and we were still removing snow for days, weeks.
We were trapped. We didn't have anywhere to put the snow because we were just surrounded by trees, and we were finding stumps, and we couldn't get the snow very far away from us, and there was just so much.
There you go. You keep inching forward and your head keeps getting cut off.
Oh, sorry.
You're good. So that's pretty much the basic story of how we got up here. Last one?
Yep, for today. Phew. So this is definitely the most dreaded part of living out here in the winter, is moving all this water like this, 6 gallons at a time, so that we can have warm water for showers and do our dishes and wash laundry. But it's worth it. I mean, without doing it, you're kind of living like you're homeless, and it's really demoralizing not being able to get a shower or having to drive. You know, if you have to drive into town to get a shower or something, that's a lot of extra time for us. So this is well worth it. It's just a lot of work. I'm going to have to estimate how many gallons I've actually had to carry this winter. I mean, it's been a lot of water.
Is that so? Really? There's
Because
a penny in that dirt.
no way. What are the chances? That's so weird.
I don't know. You're probably wondering where we've been. So, back at the beginning of February, I had to travel back east. I had a death in my family, so I went back and visited with family for about a week. And when I came back, I ended up getting the flu. And so then that put me out about another week, but just as I started to feel better, Chris then got the flu and was out for about a week. So right there, that was a little over 3 weeks of time that we just weren't recording. We didn't feel up to recording, and we really just wanted to take the time for me to spend time with my family and for Chris and I both to just get better and back on our feet.
Yeah, and on top of that, we also found out recently that I probably should technically have a hip replacement because I've been having an issue with my nerves becoming pinched off, and I get basically incapacitated, I guess you could say,
Essentially.
where I can't do a whole lot. And luckily now they have me on some medication to help with that, and it's bringing the inflammation down. I'm getting more back into my normal routine and back to normal. I'm still having some issues with it, like major pains at night when I'm trying to sleep. I just can't sleep because of that going on.
So that kind of brought us to a halt a little bit as well with getting big projects done, because we really wanted him to get better and rest up enough to be able to walk around.
Yeah. It is still winter here, and it's been winter ever since the end of October. It's been snowy, frozen ground. Short days in the beginning of winter are terrible. Like, it's hard to record almost anything because it's dark constantly. And we found that we couldn't get our cameras to really show up. You can probably see in our last couple videos at the end of fall, our cameras really don't pick up the light enough to show anything. The pictures look terrible. It just looks like dark. Even though it's not actually completely dark. It's because it's dim all day.
And then we had other times where we would be prepared to get a project started and get out there and start recording, and we'd wake up to 8 inches of snow, and by the time we cleared it all to start our project, it was dark outside.
Yeah, it's
So
nice and snowy.
unfortunately, that's kind of slowed progress just a little bit as well.
We have a lot of temporary things in place here, but we're still really unestablished. It's not like we have an indoor workspace to go and work in, and we also don't have all of the equipment that we need to do everything that you can do here in the winter. I mean, we're getting there, but it takes time. Unless if you have a lot of money, it takes time for sure. On top of that, we did, back in those beginning of winter, we were working on a lot of projects that are personal interests, I guess you could say, that just didn't really pertain to the channel. Or we also recorded a few videos that we just didn't think fit our channel, and we were like, you know what, we're not going to put these out because it's just, I don't know, the content just didn't seem interesting enough for us to release, to be honest. So we didn't put it out there. And that actually happened several times. Unfortunately.
Because this is our first year here too, we've tried to spend some of this winter just really seeing some different things and enjoying ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means
an incredible amount of time just filming wildlife.
Well,
and searching for wildlife.
yeah,
And we really enjoy that.
Sometimes just enjoying life,
In general.
unfortunately, means keeping the camera off sometimes.
Yeah, that is one unfortunate thing about making YouTube videos, is it does kind of take away from the experience a little bit. It takes a lot of extra steps to record what's going on and plan everything out to where you can actually capture it on camera. It does take away from it a little bit. Not that we don't enjoy doing it when we do it, but I don't know where I'm going with that. I guess I'm rambling.
We just kind of wanted to enjoy life off camera a little bit as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So that being said, with our channel, we're not really looking to make weekly vlogs. We want to capture projects that we're doing or experiences that we are having, but we want it interesting for you guys as well. We don't want to just try and capture every moment of our life because kind of like today with our chores around the property, I mean, that's kind of every other day, every couple day occurrence.
Yeah.
And that's not interesting for us to film.
Yeah, we don't
all the time.
We're not passionate about just showing like everyday chores. We are normal people just like everyone else, and a lot of that stuff is just boring.
To us, yeah.
To us it is anyways. But if we have anything that's interesting, we will definitely record it and put it out. And we have a lot of ideas of things that we want to do, but the weather's been pretty prohibitive on a lot of that.
We really enjoy doing videos about what projects we're working on and what experiences we're having. Say we're out fishing or hiking or, you know, whatever. But this video in particular, we're not going to do a lot of videos like this where we're just talking the whole video. That's not very interesting to us, but there were a lot of questions that we've been getting that we feel that we just really needed to answer.
Yeah, we answer almost anybody's questions in the comments. It's hard to answer everything that we just went over in a question. Yeah, in a comment section, exactly. And that isn't even all of it. Like there's actually even more to the story, and we're gonna get into that in our next video, I believe, where we talk about why we decided to move off grid, and that is a big part of why we're here right now. It's a whole nother story on its own, and we're also going to do a little bit of talking about how it's went living off grid and
a cost breakdown.
Yeah, a little bit of a cost breakdown so that people know what it costs to do what we're doing roughly. Because we've had a lot of questions about that. Like people have been wondering, you know, they're like, how much do you run your generator in the winter when there's no solar? And that's an awesome question because usually you don't ever hear people talk about that kind of stuff.
While we don't intend to make a Q&A video, that's not quite something that's interesting for us to make. Yeah. We do want to answer any questions that you might have regarding living off-grid or living off-grid specifically in Alaska that maybe we can answer in that next video.
It looked like your seeds are on top.
No, those aren't my seeds.
Oh.
Oh, that one might be. It fell off my finger, but this one is not. As you can see, we are planting tomatoes right now. We already have some onions started, and that's because spring is just around the corner, which means a lot of our projects can start picking back up again. And keep in mind, when we make these videos, all of our projects that we've done up to this point have been really big projects, and they've taken roughly 2 weeks or more to complete those projects.
For most videos, yeah.
Yep, and we condense them down to almost just 20-minute videos.
Yeah.
So we will be getting back into the swing of that when spring picks back up and we have a lot more that we can work on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In the meantime, I hope that we answered all of your questions and you enjoyed learning a little bit more about us. We will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. I think pick these up and tap them.
Tap them.
I know you were talking about, because there's a little dirt that can go in here.
So you want me to
So see how like where my dirt is? Yeah. The tomatoes are going to be transplanted pretty quickly into those 4-inch pots.
Okay. Sit. 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 Sit.
You're facing the wrong way, buddy.
Finale. Oh my.
Look at how bad he's shaking.
Thank God the birds are there. It's like causing them to look that way. You gonna kill them birds. You gonna kill them.